and welcome to part 19 of 40. Yesterday I was a bit confused because I thought yesterday was already part 19. But that's today. So tomorrow we will reach the halfway point. And it went so fast. How are you? Do you have something to drink and something to work on? I am going to answer several questions. The questions are kind of piling up, and that's okay. Well, my entire 40 Days of Vlog series is going a little bit different than I envisioned. But so I decided to handle some questions today. And one of them is, and I don't know if the questions are asked under the Dutch or under the English vlog, but both vlogs are kind of the same. So I am going to explain how I frog several rows at once. And you can already see that I did a little bit of the work to show it. And the reason I am taking out the dark green is because I decided when I tried my merengue on yesterday, I decided that it would be way too much if I put in all the blues as well. So I'm only going to add in the greens and then finish the project. I have 5 colors of green and I started with the dark color of green. And yesterday I decided that I want to do the greens in opposite direction. So first this one, then this, like this. Oh. So I started with this dark green, but I'm now going to start with this light green. And so I will put the clip in where I show how I frog more than one row at once. So here we are, and it's time to unpick the darker green rounds. I just started it somewhere in the middle, well, after a stitch marker, but not at the beginning of round. I have the 2 strands that I'm frogging of the rounds that I'm frogging. I have them here. I hold them the same way as when I was going to knit them, and then I'm going to go into the chocolate cake stitch and unravel 2 stitches at the same time. If I would need to take out more than 2 or maybe 3 rounds, first of all I would consider just taking all the stitches off the needle. That would be one thing. But if I would not want to do that, I would probably go for 3, max 4 rounds in one go, because you have all this yarn here and this will become more and more. And well, it is important that you not end up with a giant mess. So consider, if you need to do like 6 rounds, consider doing 3 by 3, for example. I hope this helps. Then there was a question about how I knit on shorties. And a knitter was wondering how I tensioned my yarn knitting on shorties, but also on regular length needles. And I made a clip of that as well. There was a question about if I could show how I work with the Shorties needles. This is not an exact Shorty set, but usually when you hold on to your knitting, you hold your needle like this. Well, at least I do. I hold my needle like this in my hand, and I have my entire hand to make all the movements that I need for knitting. And this is secured here, and this is a very easy way of working. But if you work with Shorties, you don't have that much of a needle, so then you more or less hold your knitting in between your fingers. And it's a very light grip, but with some practice you will be able to knit with Shorties as well. But it takes practice, and it probably takes, I think it took me about 3 or 4 pairs of socks to get this into my muscle memory. The light grip and the tiny movements with the tiny needles. There was also a question about how I tension my yarn. And that goes for Shorties as well as for the regular size needles. I do nothing special. I hold my yarn in between my pinky and ring finger and put it over my left hand pointer finger. And that is enough tension for me. It is just the way I got used to knitting. If you can't hold your yarn like this, you could consider wrapping it around your pinky finger, or even pinky finger, ring finger, middle finger. You can wrap it around several fingers to see if that makes it easier for you. But I promise that if you practice, you will find a way that will eventually be effortless for you. And here you can see how it looks when the light green is first. And I really like it. So I'm so happy I decided to go back in my merengue and switch things up. And according to what I had left of the yellow, I am sure that I will manage to do 5 rounds on each sock and then have enough left to do the merengue. So I might knit on that a little today. I'm not sure. And last but not least, there was a question about how I continental purl. And I made a little recording of that as well. And I will put it in here. Another question I got was, how do you continental purl? And I grab another piece of knitting. I used this earlier this week to record something for a day that I can't record. And for purling, if we look at how the purl stitch is built, you go in the front leg of the stitch on your needle, then your yarn goes in between the needles and around the right needle tip back down, and then you pull it through. So you put the needle in the stitch, your yarn goes in between the needles around the right needle tip, that is on the left of course at the moment, back down, and you pull through. if I'm purling, I'm using the exact same rotation around the needle, but the movement comes from the right needle tip, more or less. So I go in, I rotate my needle tip over my working yarn and pull through. I go in, I rotate my needle tip over my working yarn and pull through. This is the way that most knitters have a problem with. So if you want to knit continental, but this purl stitch is giving you trouble, you could consider going in and scooping up your working yarn like this. So you go in and you go over your working yarn and bring it back through the stitch. This is what I practiced first. You see, muscle memory. I wanted to make a regular purl stitch. The only thing with this way of working is that if you turn back to the right side of your knitting, your back leg will be closest to the needle tip. So your stitch is twisted on your needles. Usually your stitch will be on your needles like this, with the front leg closest to the needle tip. If that were the case, you would just knit it like you would normally do a knit stitch. But if you did the combined continental purling, so with the leading leg in the back, closest to the needle tip, you need to knit it through the back loop. And if you do that, just always remember you should go into the leading leg, so the leg closest to the needle tip. If you have a regular knit stitch, this will be the case. If you have a combined stitch, your leading leg will be in the back, and you go through the needle, through the leading leg to make your knit stitch. Furthermore, I have 3 stupid or silly sounds a bit nicer, 3 silly things that I want to share with you that has been on my mind at the moment. First of all is business hours of IKEA. Yesterday we went to IKEA to buy our new bedroom wardrobe, and we already designed it in their design tool, so we know what we want, but we wanted to go to IKEA to order it there to see if what color of door we would want, and to see if we want to have the closed sliders or the open ones, just little things like that. So we arrived at IKEA and it was already pretty quiet. So I joked to Rob about it. Like, oh, in a minute we will hear pling plong, IKEA is going to close, can you please leave the store? And about 10 minutes in, that was exactly what happened. So, we just made our way to the Pax collection, the wardrobe that we want for the bedroom. And so we were just there because it takes forever to find something in IKEA. Well, at least for me, because I don't come there often. And I totally assumed that the shop would be open until 9. To American viewers, this will probably sound silly, but many shops close around 8 or 9 here. There was this this moment that, we had 5 minutes left. So there was no point in finding an IKEA employee to see if we could order our wardrobe. So we have a rain check for tonight. And we will go earlier, of course. I have a parcel delivery that will be here at 6 at the latest. So I hope that we can leave around 6. And it will take us about 15 minutes to get to IKEA, so then we will have plenty of time. So that's one of the stupid things. I'm just not really good in IKEAing. We do have knitting breakfasts in IKEA. Then you just plan a date with several knitters from wherever they come from, and then you make sure that 1 or 2 or 3 knitters are a bit early, so they can pick a spot where we can fit the amount of knitters that are expected to come, and that's usually around 10 or 15 or something. It's not with 100. And then you just sit and have breakfast and knit. So that's fun. One time I visited IKEA and with several knitters, because I had several of these breakfast knits in IKEA. But what I really wanted to do just once was knitting in all the sample living rooms that they have there. So at a certain day and time, we all gathered at the bottom of the stairs in IKEA, and then we just went in, spread out over several living rooms, and just started knitting. And then after 15 minutes or something, we just picked our projects up, went to the next living room, and just started knitting again. So we had several living rooms, and we were trying out all the furniture. So, and that was really funny. There were IKEA employees coming to check on us from everywhere. Apparently they have a Discord or something, and someone apparently told them, go check out the living room area. We have some crazy knitters over there. And after several moves into different living rooms, there was an IKEA employee that said, I want you to stay put now. And I said, are we causing trouble? Because, of course, when we are with 3 or 4 people knitting, and there is someone who wants to try out a certain chair or something, they would not feel comfortable to do that while we were there, or to ask a knitter to get up to try out a chair. So in advance we discussed it, and we said, if we are causing trouble, we will move to the restaurant area and knit there. So I said, are we causing trouble? And he said, no, I just want you to stay here for a little while. And then there were IKEA employees who came with big trays with tea and dime sweets on it. And we got tea and dimes in the IKEA sample living rooms. And that was so cool. That was so cool. So, but other than that, I'm just not good with IKEA, apparently. So, I hope we will do better tonight. Another thing that I think is stupid, silly, is pigeons or doves. Are pigeons and doves the same thing? I think I mean pigeons. And then I mean the silly kind that we see in the movie Bolt, the Pixar animated movie. Those ones. I am amazed by the fact that when you are a pigeon keeper, that you can move them for miles and miles and miles across the border, let them loose, and they fly back home. Like, amazing. For animals that kind of surprisingly survived evolution, really. Because if you see a pigeon build a nest, they just take 2 straws, put them on top of each other, on the most inconvenient space around, and then they start laying eggs. Like, how did you come up with that? But the stupid thing really is that if you see how clumsy they are with landing, I am kind of surprised that they managed to land on my feeding tray at the front window. And they actually try to land there with more than 1 pigeon. And I'm like, how could you have survived evolution and do this? I don't understand. If you have an answer, just tell me, because it's been lingering in my mind. Okay, did I promise you 3 stupid things, silly things? I don't think I said I have 3 things, but I do. I have 3 things that all crossed my mind yesterday. You know, I've been talking about my Groningen Provinciaal, my new design that is about the province of Groningen in the northern part of the country. And I was so proud that I had the design ready to go, ready to knit, chop chop. And I knitted the first part. It's a 7-part modular shawl. And each part is equally big. And I started the second part, and like I said, it's modular, so I was very much looking forward to connecting those 2 pieces to see if it would all work out the way I envisioned it. So I was knitting on it yesterday after our IKEA trouble, and I was knitting on it, and at a certain moment I said to Rob, it is so tiny. Like, I have my sample here, and I held it up, and let's say it was this big. It was much bigger, of course, because it was a real size sample. And my new part 1 was like this big. Even a bit smaller. It was half. And it already took a fair amount of knitting. And I was like, how can this be? I know my chart was as big as the one that I did my sample out of. I checked if I used the same needle size. I know I'm on the same yarn. So I asked Rob, what do you think went wrong here? And he said, well, you only knitted half. And I said, no, I just knitted the entire chart. And then he said something very important. He said, didn't you say something about leaving the wrong side rows out? So I had 134 rows in my chart, but those were right side and wrong side rows. And indeed, I decided to ditch the wrong side rows because in the entire shawl, the way I designed it now, you knit the wrong side row as the stitches appear. So, and for part 1, that's entirely purling. And for part 5, there is some knitting and purling involved, I think. But I might even change that to just purling. And so, yeah, you know what I mean. There's nothing lost really. Part 1 is on a knitting cord. I did, however, knit the short row section there, but that's just like 30 rows or something, so that's no problem. So I knitted the short row section. I have to take that out and 3 more rows, I think, and then I need to upgrade the chart and knit the second half of part 1. So I have had a telephone call this morning with my tech editor because I really needed to chat about it with someone, and we discussed it, and this morning I have already been resizing the first chart, and I will try to do the rest today because then I can continue knitting. So those were my silly things. Yeah. And I blame my brain for being so silly and for knitting the entire part 1 and not thinking, this is kind of small, the moment I finished it. And Rob tried to be helpful. He said, well, you still have to block it. I said, no, this is not going to be blocked to the size I actually want. That's not going to happen. So anyways, welcome in my life, and my foggy brain, made me overlook something very important. I think that's it for today. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you again tomorrow for part 20. If you have any questions or if you just want to tell me something, just let me know in the comments. Bye bye.